Hi everyone, today we are delivering on a suggestion that came through on the live show. We're going somewhere that you may not expect us to visit because we're in Abercwmboi. Yes, those who come onto the live show and join in the chat at 9 o'clock UK time on a Saturday evening will be used to the name Abercwmboi, and even the phrase Abercwmboi boy, which is sometimes used regarding Rufus, who's one of the contributors there in the chat many weeks. So we decided to take a ride out, find out more about it. Now you may be thinking, Phil, that doesn't look much of a town behind you. There's a very good reason for that. This is one busy town. There's a road running straight through here going up to Aberdare, and it's got a fair bit of traffic. So some of the filming we'll use as B-rolls, and we'll talk in the quieter areas because it is beautiful here in this lovely countryside area, no more than 150 yards off the hectic high street. So let's have a look and see what we can discover and share with you about this Welsh town.
Now that's an interesting thing to come across on your path. A river. Fortunately somebody has put down some stepping stones and a bit of wood, so we're going to go for it. And we're across safely. There's a very murky looking stream running down there.
One of the stories that I've learned about this part of the world, it's not connected with the industry which came later. Of course, the brickworks at Aberaman, the colliery here, all great employers, but when you're going back to the 1830s, you're talking agriculture, and before that even. And at Issa Farm, there was some work going on, and a very poor labourer was working away, and he was taking down a dry stone wall. And as he dismantled the wall, he found a purse. And in the purse were 300 silver coins, dating back to the time of James I, Queen Mary, Elizabeth I. There were shillings, there were groats. It was a small fortune. And what I love about this story is that it's believed that the coins came probably from the Civil War, when Cromwell's army were fighting against the King's Cavaliers. Cromwell, of course, had the Roundheads. And what they believed was that someone during that conflict, probably a fighting soldier, hid his wealth and planned to return. But whatever the circumstances that surrounded his involvement in that skirmish, obviously he never came back. And the result was this gentleman working hard and finding the coins. But even better than that, the owner of the land set aside his right to the wealth, and he allowed it to be used for the benefit of the old man and his children and family, which I think was really nice. And as a result of that find, the field acquired the name Maes yr Arian, which is Welsh for the silver field. But it wasn't just silver and financial wealth that came out of that place, because there's also an account just a year or two later of an experiment that took place when they planted out in that field, and then having planted the wheat and then the following year the oats, they measured the growth and the productivity, because the land on which they were testing this for 3 months of the year never saw sun. But the wonderful thing was that although that is true, the ground proved very fertile. They had a tremendous harvest the first year with the wheat, and when they brought in the oats, they recorded that no man working on that harvest had ever seen the like before, and that one single straw was accounted to have held 280 grains of oat. Now that shows why people have worked the lands in these valleys for so long. But of course, time moved on, industry took over, and boy, this place started to grow as the houses and terraces started to be built and the colliery became the centre of attention. But as we make our way now into town and move among those streets and share with you perhaps some more stories of this wonderful location here at Abercwmboi and the secret of what its original name was and where it came from, why don't you pop over with Caroline to the kitchen, because she's going to make us a recipe using oats, just as a celebration of that famous field and the test that was carried out in 1836.
Hello everyone and welcome to Panky's Kitchen. We're going to be baking some nut-baked oatmeal loaf or cake today. We haven't decided which, depends on which shape pan we put it in. I am filming with my phone, holding it in my hand, so it could be very shaky. But let's have a look at the ingredients. We've got 2 1/4 cups of old-fashioned oats, 2 eggs, 2 1/2 cups of milk, 4 tablespoons of melted butter, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of pure maple syrup, 1/2 cup of roughly chopped walnuts. In here we got 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Into the large bowl we have to put oats, salt, baking powder and cinnamon, walnuts, the brown sugar with a big lump in. I should have flattened that out really. There we go, that's done enough. And now mix it all together. Into another bowl we're going to put in the milk, the 2 eggs, lightly beaten, and the maple syrup. We mix that together. And then we pour all these wet ingredients into the dry ingredients and then mix well. But I'm going to do this with one hand because I'm holding my phone, which is really awkward. That wasn't mixed very well, was it? Cooking with one hand isn't funny. Now give this a mix. As I've only got one hand, I'm going to grease this with some of my melted butter. Give that another mix. And now pour it all into this bowl. Or tin, or whatever you're using. Like that. And then pour the melted butter over the top. And then stir gently. Now I have no idea why you can't just put the melted butter in with everything else. That's what I would normally do, but I'm following the recipe so that if it goes wrong, it's a bit clattery, if it goes wrong it's not my fault. Now put this into the oven at 350 degrees for 40 to 55 minutes until golden brown and fluffy. I wonder what it's going to taste like. So here's our cake, our loaf cake out of the oven. It's a little bit burnt on the edges, but I think it'll be fine. So the next thing to do is to try to be patient, let this cool, then we'll turn it out of our bowl and see what it looks like. So here we have the finished product. It doesn't look burnt at all now. It's very nice, and these crispy bits on the top are the best bit, I think. If I were to make this again, I think I would turn it over the other side and cook it on the other side too, to make it crispy both sides, because the crispy bits are so nice. It's very heavy, but it's very tasty, and I definitely think I'd have this again. Well, thanks for watching Panky's Kitchen. We'd better get back to Abercwmboi.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that visit with Caroline and Panky over there making cakes. Of course, this place is actually quite famous when it comes to baking. Not only for the oats that were produced up there in the mountains, but also for a bakery that for many years down here in the industrial town attracted hundreds of customers from up and down the valley for many, many years. But I mentioned the name of this place, and to give you a clue, it's right behind me on the sign, because up there it says Cap Coch, which is Welsh for red cap. And for 400 years, that's what this place was called, Cap Coch. And it was named after a publican who owned a public house and ran it, and his claim to fame, the reason everybody knew him as Cap Coch, was because he wore a red cap. But then 100 or so years ago, the Reverend Davis, along with a number of other prominent residents and others, made a petition to say they didn't want this, what they called vulgar name, any longer for their town. And they felt they now wanted a name with status. And it was agreed that Cap Coch would become Abercwmboi, but with a notable exception. The school is still known as Cap Coch School. And of course, the pub is also known as Cap Coch Inn. But there we are. What's in a name? Well, for the people at the time, it meant a lot, and they got it changed. Yes, now that I've climbed to the top of Abercwmboi and I'm looking out over the valley to the mountains beyond and the modern industry that's here today, you start to get an understanding for the people of the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that sense of civic pride that they took in their town. And of course, right up until the influx of the 20th century, this was very much a Welsh-speaking area. It was the miners coming from all around the country that altered that. And actually in 1891, on the two oldest streets, Jenkin and John Street here, the majority, by a long way, registered themselves on the 1891 census as Welsh being their first language. So that's another thing that changed over the years and is now changing back, with Welsh medium education really coming to the fore in Wales over the last 50 years. And so many more are now bilingual and speak the language. But as well as taking pride in their town and changing its name and seeing the buildings going up, the chapels and the institute and all of the different establishments, the school, because the original school is no longer there, because I think it was around about 1980 the mining heritage that is here showed up in a very destructive way, because the schoolyard disappeared into a sinkhole. But the local parents petitioned and got the Welsh authorities to replace their school, which showed the stamina and determination of the mums here in Abercwmboi at that time. But this was also a place that took pride in its people, because there is records here of where the town has honoured what they saw as their heroes. such as in 1915, when Sergeant Scott returned to Abercwmboi, having been given a medal. He had been presented with the DCM, the Distinguished Conduct Medal, and the town took great pride in that. And they had a collection, and they had a meeting at the Capcoch Inn that we filmed just down the road. And in that meeting, they made speeches of his bravery and made a presentation. They gave him a wristwatch. They also gave him a gold signet ring and a purse with gold coins in. But the sergeant, when he returned with his speech, simply said that he was surprised by the response and the gifts, and most grateful, but he had only been doing his duty. And then 15 years later, there was another presentation here. This time in 1930, it was to a young man, a collier, working here in the local pit by the name of Morris. And he saved 2 young boys from drowning in the feeder pond that was here for the Dyffryn Colliery. And once more, the town collected and made a presentation to Mr. Benny Morris. And the young man was taken aback when they gave him a gold watch and chain and a medal and a parchment and a wallet that was filled with notes. And his response, again with the equal humility of Sergeant Scott 15 years earlier, was when he said, "I am overwhelmed by the gifts I've received for the little I have done." So some great stories of bravery and modesty, which combined really do set the scene for a town in the valleys that has much to be proud of, a town that has seen so much change and will probably see a lot more in the years to come. In the 1940s, it wasn't just the bakery here. You know, there were about 40 shops in the town, but that's all changed now. And one of the places that people from here will tend to head if they want to do a major shop would be to the main town, just at the top of the valley here, Aberdare. And someone in our chat has asked before, will we be visiting Aberdare? So let's just pop along there now and we'll give you a little look at the shops there in Aberdare. Well, what do you think of Aberdare then? just 2 miles up the road from Abercwmboi. All them shops, and of course, you know, Caroline and I, we do love a thrift store, or charity shop as we call them here in Wales. And we've had a brilliant time. Hope you have too. If you have, then please give us a thumbs up.
Doing, doing, doing.
And don't forget, if you know anyone who'd like to travel with us around the villages and towns of Wales and beyond, then share the link with your friends. But most importantly, until the next time we're out and about, don't forget, have fun. Bye.
Bye.